I ask that you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, for roll, Mr. Terry, can you call roll for City Council?
Sure. Demore.
Aye.
Shields.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
There she is. And Murphy.
Present. We have a quorum, 5 of us from City Council. Becky, Ms. Goodman, would you please call roll for your downtown management report?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay. Shorter. Here. Keady.
Here.
Smith.
Present.
Slocum.
1 here.
Albert.
Yes.
Tuesday. Here. Bennett. Here. And Murphy is here.
Wow, very good. Thanks for the turnout of everybody showing up. Very, this is impressive, and this is probably our first. We'll have many more. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Becky Goodman, our downtown management board, actually downtown director. And she's going to introduce our speakers for tonight. Becky.
Well, first of all, I can't believe we have an audience and we've got board members. That's wonderful. This is exciting. We have here tonight Jake Jefferson, longtime friend of mine, I've met in the past. Walker Parking Consultants. They have worked in Pulaski for years and years and years. I don't know, Jake, how many times have you been up here on a field trip?
Quite a lot.
20, yeah, I know.
Well, there's lots of reasons.
Yeah.
Including the beauty.
So they were chosen for this project because they know the town well, they have background, they've done studies for Pulaski or parking studies, so they've had this on this scale. So I'm gonna get my notes and I'm gonna go sit over there in the corner, but I'll be back in front, but I'm gonna let them take over. They're gonna make a presentation and there'll be time for questions. Do you want them to just ask questions as you present, or?
I will brush that.
All right.
Thank you, Becky. And will we have a keyboard house?
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
all right, good. Well, while we're getting that on together, mayor and city council members and members of the downtown management board, anyone else who's here, Rick and I are really happy to be here. Like he said, that Walker has done work here. We've done lots of things. On the Darling lot in particular, we became very familiar with that back in 2016 when we were looking at concepts for a parking structure, multi-level parking structure that would be just that, a parking structure, and also looking at a mixed-use structure. And we did a very similar project as we're doing now for that back in 2016. Tonight, Rick and I are going to present a couple of concepts for a platform parking structure. That is a parking structure that has parking on grade level, and there is one supported level. And we're taking advantage of different elevations in the site. And you'll see as we go along and explain what we are thinking is a good design as we go forward on that. Our goal tonight is to give you enough information and also to answer your questions. And by the way, please ask your questions as they occur, okay? Also, if we have time at the end for questions as well. If you're like I am and everything's done, you're starting to read, I go, geez, I wish I would have asked that question. Find Rick and I, we will stay here until we've answered everybody's questions to the best of our ability, okay? Our goal tonight is to provide you with enough information and understanding so that you can develop a consensus as to which scheme you think is appropriate for Pulaski. We're going to share with you some design options or design elements. These are in this presentation because of my conversations with Becky as we were talking about this and I was preparing a proposal for the work. I wanted to know what was on the mind of some of the folks that are involved in determining whether there should be a parking structure here. And those design elements we're going to discuss and give you some information on that as well. Okay. Let's see if we just finished the introduction. This gives you the layout of what we want to present to you. We're going to start with the initial design objectives. The most important one is adding more parking to downtown Petoskey. Try to get as many spaces as possible out of the site. That is additional spaces. You already have 130, I think it is, spaces that are on the surface lot. We want to get as good a number as we can on the supported level. And Rick will take you through that. Covered parking. On a maybe one sunny day last week, it would have been nice if you had parked on top, if it had at least a little bit of shade. Okay, but probably more people think about the fact that we're in a climate here where you can have lots of snow. And wouldn't it be nice if you did park on the top level, if you could go up and you could at least get to a car that you didn't have to scrape off the snow. Okay. Structure height has always been very important here, going all the way back to the Petoskey Point project, and as well the 2016 project, and even the platform structure over by the courthouse. We did a concept for that as well. Exterior appearance. Well, the last thing anybody wants to do is drop a big concrete bunker in the center of town. So there has to be some sensitivity to that as well. Sustainability, it's important. There are more and more sustainable elements that are being added to parking structures. And we can spend all the time talking about the benefits on those. Want to give you, you'll see as we talk them through, you'll see where decision points start to come. And also thinking ahead, can you make a parking structure? Can you design a parking structure that you can modify later on? Can you make it accommodate a non-parking use? We'll talk more about that as well.
Click the screen, try to move that bar. Now try to arrow.
There you go. I always appreciate the high tech that we had with us the whole time. Let's go to the conceptual parking layouts. Rick, will you walk us through those, please?
Sure. A little refresher on the site. Jake talked about the two-level structure. The yellow highlighted area represents the area where we want to place it. So things that aren't going to change, that you got the alley here and the 26 spaces along the alley will still be there. And then you got the corridor, the pedestrian corridor that was built a few years ago, that will stay. One thing we have to be mindful of, on the east side, there is a deed restriction, so we don't want the lower level. That lower level is going to carve out towards Michigan, so it's going to be a basement level. And so we're going to make sure the wall stops about right here on the east side. And of course, we got the sidewalk on Petoskey and Michigan, which is going to serve. Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, why stop it right before the 26 spaces in the alley? Is it just
we can't use
space for the alley?
Yeah, right. So if you look at a module for parking, you can fit 2 bays in there, but not enough to get through. And you'll see that in the next slide.
Yeah.
So it makes sense just to keep them there. Yeah. And the site, if you were to, the high point of the site is there we go, is right here. And if you were to walk on a diagonal towards the northwest corner, that's the low point, drops about 10 feet. And one more thing, if you were to walk along this Michigan Street here towards the corner, it actually drops 4 feet. You don't see that, but it actually does. And then it drops another, then Petoskey, it drops a little bit more, it drops 6 feet in that direction. So it just gives you a little bit of lay of the land, what we're working with, and how we're going to tuck that 2 levels in there. So we looked at 2 options to figure out, 2 parking layout options to figure out which one is going to give you the most parking spaces and the best circulation. So we looked at angled parking and we looked at 90-degree. This right here shows the angled parking. So you got one-way lanes, and with both options, they both are going to be the same length, but the width in north-south, north is up. So north-south dimension, of course, the one-way traffic lanes are a little bit narrower than the 2-way traffic lanes. So you gain about 6 or 8 feet on this option, which gives you a little bit of room to put some landscaping up here on the north side if you choose. It also lets us put, these are stair towers in the corner here, in this corner here. And it allowed us to put those on the outside of the footprint of the structure so we can get as many spaces as possible in the interior. And of course, the circulation is pretty simple. It's 2 bays, you just make one loop. We chose to do a counterclockwise loop, so there's no crisscrossing of traffic at the entrance. So if you make a loop, there's no parking. You go out to Petoskey, you go up Petoskey, and you go up Michigan, and now you're on the upper level, and you would enter right here.
One point I'd like to make is the first level that Rick showed you, that does require some extensive excavation.
Yeah, so you would have a basement wall along the south side here, you'd have a basement wall along the east side and a basement wall along probably about a third of this wall on the north side here. And then as the grade diminishes in both directions, as it slopes down towards the northeast corner, you start having openings here and you have openings here. And of course, we'll talk about that a little bit because that has implications. You're going to have to fire sprinkler and you're going to have mechanical ventilation because you don't have enough openness. So here's did I go around that? Excuse me.
Go up.
I am. All right, I must have hit a magic button, the home button. Scope another couple. Okay, so we're still in angled parking. Here's the upper level. With the upper level, you also have access from the alley. One thing with the upper level, we talked about 2 flat slabs. This slab is not perfectly flat. We had to raise the west end up over here so that we have enough room that cars can drive in the entry in the lower level right here. So we had to lift it up a couple of feet. So everything tilts, works out to be about 1 to 2% towards the east. And so when we show you the rendering, you'll see how it kind of rises out of the ground a little bit. Now the 90-degree parking, it's the same sort of layout. You have the flexibility that people can drive any direction they want. So you have that benefit. You do not have any green space up here because we are filling this whole site up on the north end here. And you can see the stair tower here and the stair tower here are now in the interior of the structure. And when you look at the space count between the two, that's what it all comes down to. What's the space count difference? You get 3 more spaces with the 90-degree parking. You build a little bit more square footage, and so it's not really that big of a difference. It just depends which one you prefer. If you like the circulation pattern of one over the other, most people like the 90-degree. It's a lot more user friendly.
What do you recommend?
I'd probably go with the 90-degree if I had the choice. You're going to get 3 more spaces. You're paying a little bit more money for that extra 6 to 8 foot strip of concrete, but you're getting 3 more spaces, and the trade-off is worth it.
And I do think, I'm sorry, if I could finish that, then we'll come to you. The 90-degree 2-way traffic is really the friendliest circulation pattern. People tend to come in and park, and then they usually think that they can go back out the same way. When you have angled parking, Sometimes people are going the wrong way, and then it depends on if you have cars already there, and it tends to be a problem. But I think that and the fact that you get some extra spaces, at least in my opinion and Rick's opinion, that one would be one that we think is a very good one. Both of them work.
Right.
Yes, ma'am?
On the angle structure, you said that the stairs were on the exterior. Are
Yeah.
those covered?
Yeah, you'll see that in the rendering, yeah. Yeah, definitely in this climate, you'd want to do that. Otherwise it'd be a maintenance nightmare and a safety problem.
On here also, you can see that we put the accessible parking spaces, the Americans with Disabilities Act spaces, and we've shown 2 charging stations in the upper right-hand corner.
Yes, this is the covered level, so we put the EV stations on the covered level. And we put the ADA spaces where it made the most sense, right next to the ground level. So if you're on the lower level, you want to wheel out to the sidewalk here. And if you're on the upper level, we put them in this corner over here because you're at grade on the upper level over here. So. Okay. And we went through the space count. So the next thing I want to talk about is just some of the features that's common to both of these. We talked about, I alluded to it earlier, about the openness. We have a little bit of openness on this side and this side, but not enough for it to be classified as an open parking structure per code. Per code, it's going to be classified as enclosed, and there's formulas for that. Anyway, so we show putting a fan in this corner right here. With right there is a picture of a grate on the top level that would exhaust the carbon monoxide from the vehicles up through that vent shaft. So it'd be connected to carbon monoxide sensors, pretty typical for basement level construction.
For the upper level, we cover.
That's one of the options that Jake's going to present. Yeah. Let me see. Also, if you, just to give you an idea how the height of the structure varies as you go around it. If you were standing right here, the only thing that would be sticking up would be the stair tower right here. And the stair tower is going to stick up about 10, 12 feet, depending on what type of roof you put on it. And then if you're standing in this corner over here on the sidewalk, of course, now you're at the lower level, you got the upper level up here, and above the upper level, you have the stair tower that projects up. So probably in the neighborhood of about 25 feet. Similar to the house, some of the houses across the street. And if you're standing in this corner right here on the sidewalk, we already talked about how Michigan Street angles down about 4 feet, and our structure, we picked up a couple of feet, so we're going to be about 6 feet higher. This side will be about 6 feet higher than the sidewalk, plus you'll have a 3.5 foot wall around the perimeter as a vehicle barrier. And the rendering that Jake's going to show you in a little bit will provide more information on that, or help illustrate what we're trying to describe. Seems like one other thing I wanted to go over was pedestrian circulation. It's pretty intuitive, of course. If you're on the upper level here and you want to go to Howard Street this way, you just walk off the structure. If you want to go to Petoskey, you take this stair down to the sidewalk. And if you're on the lower level, just the opposite, right? You just walk out the structure here to the sidewalk and you take the stair up here to Howard Street. Not too complicated. So, and one thing I want to point out is in this traffic island, or in this landscape island here, in this landscape island here, you have transformers and you have some telephone equipment, and there's an underground line going in between. And we know that we're going to be doing a lot of excavation along here in this corner and all along this side here, but particularly this corner could affect that equipment. So as we get closer to that, we're going to have to take, if you go to construction, there's going to have to be some sort of temporary like a sheet piling wall, some sort of soil retention. Or if it gets too close, depending on, when you do an exact survey, if we find, we might have to relocate some of that. So, something that we'll have to take account in the cost estimate. Does anybody have any questions about the layout? If not, I'll turn it over to Jake.
For those that are speaking, don't forget to hit your microphone, just so it gets recorded also. Thank you.
Yeah. What's the total space count for both the angle and the 90 degree?
So 164 spaces for the angled and 167 for the 90 degree.
And we had what, 130?
102 existing.
100.
So you have a net gain of 62 to 65 spaces, depending on what option you pick.
Okay. Design elements. We'll talk about covered parking first. In the upper right, that's a solar panel array, and it's an inverted pitch. That's common also. There, you'll see one later on, which is angle. Anybody who's putting a solar array together wants to have, it's all about angles so that you can harvest as much solar energy as you can. Lower left, that is actually a solar panel array, and the white border around it goes all the way through. That is a roof. And they installed the array on top of the roof, and they've got drainage and all that type of thing. So that's just an example, and that actually has about a 2% slope. There are some that have been just laid flat. We'll talk a little bit more about that. What you see in the bottom center, that is a very large deck in Las Vegas. It's McCarran Airport. And you see covered parking, just the spaces. And when you look at the perimeter of the roof, that's also covering the spaces that are associated and located under there. So that's an example of covered parking. Obviously in Las Vegas, they don't need snow plows. At least rarely would they need that, okay? But that's just one example. There are parking structures, large ones, that have full roofing over them. An example is the Gerald Ford Airport. Their parking structure there that's next to the terminal has a metal roof over the top. The one on the lower right is a sustainable roof. A lot of floor on that. All of them can be considered a roof of some sort. So, there are choices there. You see the asterisk, the sustainable green roof. I'll talk about that a little bit later. It's more than just putting, a slab of concrete up there and then throwing some dirt down and some seed. So we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go along. Let's talk about steel roof. These are things that are all in the mix of making a decision about whether or not you want to do something like that. It adds height. If you take what we are presenting now, the platform parking structure, you're going to add what, Rick, maybe 14 to 18 feet, depending on the pitch of the roof. Yeah, okay. So you're adding height. Any roof you put on over this supported level will have to be engineered all the way down to the ground. Footings will have to be more robust, columns, that kind of thing. Additional lighting. You obviously have to light now the supported level. There will be annual maintenance and repair costs. If you go with a steel roof, you'll have a steel structural system. Or we could go with concrete and steel system. But then you also have the roof itself and the trusses and all those things. You would have snow and ice control for the parking. If it's only over the parking space, your aisles are open. So you will have to have snow and ice control maintenance at that time. One thing that a lot of folks don't think about, but bird control becomes a big issue. As a matter of fact, that's the one that's probably the most noticeable. Reg, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, all right, sorry. When you have a roof, you can engineer it to a degree so that birds don't have as many places to nest. But I've not seen anything that doesn't require regular nest removal. And there are lots of different bird deterrents on the market. And some of them are fantastic at supplying a base for nests. The only one that I've seen that has worked to some degree of effectiveness is a sound-based system. It's an electronic system that sends out irritating sounds. Humans can't hear them. Problem is the birds get used to it. So you're constantly changing, and I haven't seen a new version of that in a while. I will tell you that the only 100% effective bird control is someone looking at it 2 or 3 times a week. If we did just a roof over parking spaces, steel roof, for this particular structure, this platform structure we're talking about here in Petoskey. Now it says, 500,000. Rick can speak more to this if necessary, but I can tell you that the days and times that we're in right now, any kind of dollar amount we put up there can change dramatically within a day. Supply chain, you all heard supply chains, getting help, getting trades and all that. But just to help you understand relative magnitude of cost, just over parking spaces, about $500,000. Putting it over the entire top, about just trying to get over $1 million. Green roof. Again, it adds height. It takes a lot more additional engineering. You really are putting, in our trade, we call it a podium structure. That is a specially engineered structure to carry the loads that the rest of the roof requires. Just to the left of the picture, that's a 9-layer sandwich. There are 9 different layers to what you see to the right. I can't, I'm not too old to read all the things that are on there, but there are, for example, you have your concrete slab, then you have a waterproofing membrane over that. And I think the blue thing is styrofoam. Then you have, as you get closer to the top, you have your soil, and then you have your fill at the top. That's a pretty big number, the 2,400. Out of that number, roughly 800,000 is for the flora and some of the layers right there. The bulk of the cost, and I think that's about 800,000. I think the bulk of the cost is for the first 2 layers, waterproofing and the concrete that goes on there. There's also additional costs included, which is, again, we would have to design more robust columns, starting at the foundations all the way up to accept the extra weight and the loads. And additional lighting, additional maintenance and repair, that takes kind of a different note. You're gonna spend more time keeping your eye on making sure that things are growing well. Yes, sir.
Additional lighting, why would you light the top if nobody can see it?
Well, I'm not referring to the top. If you put a roof on there,
Okay,
now it's underneath, yeah,
additional lighting, no matter what roof you have on,
correct.
is gonna require lighting underneath the roof. Okay, I thought maybe you were
Yeah,
talking.
no, well, I'll be back. Yes, sir.
Does the 2.4 million include, getting water to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There are some systems, and by the way, this is it's called an extensive assembly. There, you can back down to where you don't put sprinkler in. Okay, you know, there are some concessions and some things you can do to bring it down, but you still have the major cost, which is the construction of the podium level and all the supports you need to have for it there. Yes.
Hi, as a person with a brown thumb, my question is how practical is this in our weather environment?
I'm not qualified to tell you. I would think that in this environment here, there are plants that grow, and there are plants that not only survive, but they thrive. I wouldn't suggest that you plant weeds up there, but that question would be answered by somebody that's very familiar with this area here. And certainly, any green roof that you see hasn't been, you know, picked out of off a shelf and said, here it is. That's an excellent question. And that part of the whole assembly has to be custom designed by someone that knows what they're doing as far as the type of vegetation and flora there.
There's two demonstration, green roofs, one at North Central Michigan College and another one at the Headlands. I would not advise that. It's nice for demonstration, but that costs.
What's the
There's
lifespan
nothing
of these
sustainable in that.
membrane layers?
Do you know
I didn't hear the question.
the lifespan of the membrane?
Oh, typically we say 25 years is what you see in the industry, but usually get more than that. You might have some localized repairs you have to do. But you're going to go with a really good system. You're going to go with like an adhered system, something you have confidence in. That, see, because it's so expensive to try to repair something because you got to take all the upper levels off. So you're going to go with the best membrane you can possibly get if you're going to go with this type of system.
Sometimes leaks occur. I'm thinking in Grand Rapids, if you're familiar with Camp Hall Square, that's their really big plaza that's on top of underground parking structure. We have done surgery on that several times. There's been a leak that's occurred. We don't, you know, we have to find out why. So we would make an educated guess based on our observations and then cut out certain areas and take them out layer by layer to find what needs to be done. Like Rick says, if you go to a system like this, you want to make sure that you have just a crackerjack super job. Everything was done correctly. And then you can live for quite a while without any issues. If something does go awry, it doesn't mean that the whole system is bad. It can be repaired, but it is expensive to repair. Any other questions on this?
So from this angle, it looks like it's a beautiful roof. So, but if you're standing down on the street, what do you actually see?
You won't see it if you're standing on the
Okay,
street.
that's what I mean, it looks really nice there.
Mhm.
Have they ever done a combination where it's around the edge of it and then the solar panels in the middle?
I mean, like a mix.
I'm not aware, but yeah, I see no reason why you couldn't do that. You know, there are parking structures that have for the facade, they have a living facade. They have vines and they have different plants that come down, that kind of thing. But I don't think there's any limit on combinations of things that might be incorporated on a roof. In fact, you know, you could, when we get to the adaptive reuse schedule or slide, one of the things that you could do is if you have to build the podium level and you want to have a green roof, why not put a hardscape in there and make it a usable city event center, outside event center? You know, I mean, there's all kinds of things I think you could do. Moving on, solar panel. There are decks that have solar panels. We've shown you some. Here is what I referred to earlier. In this case, they are covering both sides of the parking aisle. I mentioned the one on the left, that array is sitting on a roof. The one on the right, that is a steel frame structure, kind of a lattice structure. And the steel supports the outsides of each solar panel around the perimeter. So it's not a true roof. So there are a number of ways you can do that. Again, solar panels will add height to the overall structure. We would, again, you have to engineer a structural system to accommodate it, lighting and drainage. You will have to do bird control and additional maintenance and repair, but that can be the roof itself, or you're going to have to at times go up and work on the panels themselves. The approximate added construction for doing something right, if you're covering just parking spaces, again, this is for the platform structure that we're talking about here, it's about $850,000. If you want to go over the whole top level, cover the whole top level, that's going to be about $1.4 million. Exterior appearance. You know, I've been in the business long enough. I remember when I was a young man, when parking structures were just these big old kind of nasty looking things that they plopped down in town, and they were not very nice to look at. That has thankfully transformed, and it's expected that if a parking structure is going to be built, you need to make sure that it complements its surroundings, or at least it's certainly not an eyesore. There are lots of different ways, a lot of different facade treatments. On your upper right, that is considered upper range. That is actually, it's a huge parking structure, and they break it up 3 times with what's called a light well. We're really looking at the interior of the parking structure with levels on each side. Each level has a different color. On the outside at night, each level, it's banded. It's fantastic. It's the Duke Energy Company, I think it is, in Oklahoma. But why I put that up there, it's a good example, but more and more communities and private owners are incorporating lighting, up lighting or down lighting, different colors. You can do some nice things with that, not nearly to this level. I mean, this is the granddaddy of it, but Lighting is something you can do. The lower left is another example of upper range architectural treatment. That's a parking structure that has a three-story bookstore. It has a police station in it. This is University of Virginia. And they're matching the architecture of the other buildings there. Okay, so, and they pay a lot of money for it, but they have just a fantastically beautiful campus. The middle one you see, that's in Marshall, Michigan. That's I think it's a 245 space structure. That is mid-range architectural treatment. The walls were cast off site. It's called precast with brick veneer, and the arched window look is just simply something that was done when they were being constructed, and it matched up with the windows on Main Street. This deck right here serves both the commercial section that is on that block, and then on the street you see there across is the hospital. So it was important. By the way, that's in the middle of the largest residential historic home district in the United States. That's why that kind of treatment was called for. Right to my right here in the lower corner, it's a little hard on perspective, but yeah, right here, this is exactly like, well, I should say it's similar to what the platform structure will be here. This is in, I think it's Birmingham or Orchard Lake. This takes you up to the highest point, grade level, and that's the upper level. Then it comes down. This is actually the corner, and now it's going at a 90-degree angle there, and you can just barely see that's where you come in underneath. That is about as basic as you can get, because there's nothing except concrete that you see, except the developer. Not sure why this person did this, but he originally was going to have brick laid along that wall. He actually decided, can't do it right now, but he put all the elements in that are there. So when he does want to put the bricks on, it's all done. We don't have to go back and do anything other than go ahead and put the bricks on. Okay. That would be your low range architecture. And you know, it's very difficult to put a number. You know, right now it's just the more creative you get, usually more money. It's not letting me go back.
I'll try it.
No.
Is it stuck again?
Yeah, here it is. I apologize, Sarah. I got a stitchy finger. This will help orient you to what Rick is talking about. We are showing you're looking southeast, okay, and you can see Rick in the stair tower right over here. And Rick, why don't you point to where they're going in on the bottom here? You're in and out. Okay. Go over that little yellow object to the right. Our designer snuck in a little park bench there. Okay. we show the areas that we can landscape.
This is the angled version, so we have room for landscaping.
Yeah. Oh, okay, all right, yeah, we'll go there. And you'll see the other stair tower up at the top. At the very top, Rick, if you'll go up over to the right, and this is where you will enter in from Michigan.
And everything is flush along here.
Yeah. Now, I'm not, for 1 minute, I'm gonna make a comment about the facade. We're not facade designers. Okay, but we do have architects, we can do drawings, but you know, that is an example of mid architecture. Okay. We put that in there just as an example. When I was talking with Becky, I was in full agreement with her that it's not just facade. I've always felt it's facade along with landscaping. When you put the two together, you can make something look really very nice. And so one of the things that we want to make sure is that we leave room for landscaping as well. That facade there could be thin brick. And the panels that it's on can be precast. And precast is a real good way to get a good architectural treatment. Let's go to the next one, Rick.
I have one question.
Yeah.
In these renderings, which are all very nice, did you take into consideration how people are paying for their parking? Are each of the slots metered, or will it be an arm?
Well, we did not put in parking access control equipment. We did that for a reason. Yes, you could put meters in there, but what I'm thinking is a multimeter, like the Elks Lot has.
Okay.
Yeah. That way we can, keep everything nice and clean, and you don't have the meter maintenance, that type of thing.
And you lose a lot of spaces too. Several spaces, you lose, yeah.
On this one thing you'll see, we did a cutout at the lower right corner there that softens the edge. It gives a little bit better sight lines at the intersection right there. And again, there is landscaping that goes along. That again is the angled version. Those elements that I'm pointing out will be there with the 90-degree two-way.
Right. And this shows what I was trying to describe, how the street drops down and about 4 feet, and the structural slab rises a little bit. So you have about a 6-foot difference between this floor slab and this sidewalk at this corner. And you also have about a 3.5-foot barrier wall along the outside, along 3 of the sides.
Repurposing, adaptable reuse. I'll let you read that sentence up there. It really comes down to how confident are you? There are 3 categories of thinking that we go through. The first one is if it might happen, if there is, that really might happen. There are certain things you can do that might cost you maybe 5 to 10% more. For example, if you think that you want to put housing, for example, on top, at a later date. What the designer can do is make, working with you to get a good picture of what you're thinking. What the designer can do is all the different, from footings to columns to all the different types of things that have to be taken into account. So when the time comes, all of that's there. And then all we have to do is get the podium on top, and then the construction can go from there. If you think later on you might want a sustainable roof, the same thing. There'd be some different elements that we would have to design. But other things, and I'll get to that in a minute, but if it's likely to happen, then there are more things we can do. If you're thinking about if housing is really going to happen, then we can start working with elevator cores and things like that, ducting, pipe runs, things like that aren't going to be put into use until that comes on. If you're absolutely certain it will happen, it's going to cost you significantly more. We have not run across anybody yet that has said we know for sure in 25 years this is going to need to be a classroom building, for example. I haven't seen that. Things that, and this right here is only just a tiny bit of the types of things that you have to look about and pay attention to. There are many other things you can do with that, but yes, you can do adaptability.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go back to the, thank you, the solar roofs. Right, you gave us like a 1.4 million for the total roof, 850K for the partial. Do those numbers include the extra prep that you need for the footings for the entire structure?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. All right.
Unless there's any questions here, we're coming to the end of our steps that we will take in this project. I'm hoping that we've given you enough information. And by the way, if you think of something,
Just a point of clarification. I thought I heard two different numbers on the existing number of spots now. So what's the correct number?
there are two numbers because of the two different systems.
No, the existing right now.
There's 102 in that yellow footprint, and then one in the alley was 26.
Okay, so it's 102 plus the 26. The 26 would exist after, in addition to the structure.
Yes.
Got it.
So when I gave the number of 154 for option 1 and 67, it had 26 on top of that.
Got it. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other?
What is the lifespan of a parking deck such as this? I was reading about 4 to 5 years. Is that comparable? Okay. And then maintenance costs. Yearly, every decade, 20 years, estimate of that, will that be included as well? Thank you.
Typically, it used to be, this is about 10 years ago, right? It used to be like the first 10 years, it was around 10 cents, then 20 years, you budget 20 cents, and 20 to 30, you budget 30 cents. By the time you get 50 years, it goes to 50 cents a square foot.
Right.
So,
And, you know, any number that's put out for lifespan, have to assume that regular appropriate maintenance and repairs being done. If you treat it like a bridge, it depends on construction, but you may have to replace it for 5 years.
Okay.
So that's
Misleading the game, sorry.
So the process is gonna be that you want information from the downtown management board and city council.
Sorry. You want information from the downtown management board and probably in combination with city council on what concept you want us to have you expend energy on to give us an actual price.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you have a question, sir? Yeah, so I know you just said we need more information. You can probable estimate, it says up there probably. Is there just any real rough estimate of what we could expect for a project like this right now?
I haven't put the numbers on it yet, so I don't want to just throw out a number. I just know that the numbers are going to be much higher than they were a year ago, just from what's been happening, prices that we see coming in. We're probably, we're going to have this report done in about 2 or 3 weeks, so.
Okay. And what was that price at 1 year ago?
Well, for a space, for typical, for like an average parking structure, kind of nice mid-range.
Yeah.
If it was an above ground structure, this is underground, it was about $25,000 a space. It comes down to economy of scale too. When you have a smaller structure, you pay a little bit more of a premium. Because you got all the same mobilization costs, all the same trades coming to the site, but you're building a smaller structure.
And there's another cost involved, and that's the amount of excavation.
So that 25,000 rough estimate, I know this is, we're talking very rough. Was that adding every space in the structure, or did that include?
Every space in the structure.
So if we're looking at a project like this, we're talking, that would be about spread out over 160
This
spaces.
one will be more because you're gonna have the excavation. For example, I did a underground structure 2-3 years ago, we completed it. It was like a 400 space structure and it came in at about 45,000 a space.
Okay, and so I guess the crux of my question is, when we see a price like that, is that based off of, when we look at the cost per space, are we looking at it as cost per 100, spread out over 164, 167 spaces? So it's not that we're only really adding 60 some odd.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you divide it by the 60, it's gonna be a much bigger number.
Okay.
There's another question, would you have, or, yes, sir?
I don't need the answer tonight, but just consideration on solar panels on a ramp like that in the middle of town. What is the solar used for? Does it go to know, so we've got solar panels on this building that help this building.
You have to find, you have to see if your electrical supplier, provider will let you sell it back to them.
Okay,
We are the utility.
Oh, that's right, so,
yeah,
well, you want to sell it back to you.
yeah, okay.
Was there another question that we had? Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Really appreciate it. And Becky, if you would, at some point, let us know what,
Yes.
Not here now.
This consensus.
Now, downtown, basically, there's no further business to come before this meeting. So basically, this meeting is over. There's nothing else on the agenda. I got asked about discussion that has to take place at a separate time. It isn't gonna happen now because in about 2 minutes ago, downtown management board had a scheduled 7 o'clock meeting that needs to start.
I have one question, and that is for the downtown management board, are you looking for council's opinions on this matter? Because I was understanding that this was scheduled because this and planned because this was council's desire in the past, the previous makeup of council to have this study. And in all due respect, council has changed the makeup, and so this meeting is not for discussion of council's opinion, that's for later, is that downtown management?
That's correct.
It could be another meeting.
We can schedule another meeting to do the design concepts that you want, but right now, basically all it was the presentation.
Yeah.
So that was gonna be it. There was no lines for discussion, time to redesign this and as a group. We can reschedule this. Then we can do that in the future, but we really can't do that now.
Thanks, Jake, thanks,
Like you
Rick.
said, we're gonna get a plan together, I'm gonna get back to Jake and say, this is what they all decided they wanted. So everyone has to agree. We talk about.
So it'll probably we'll discuss it, it'll come to city council for discussion. If we like what they send to us, then we will move forward with it. If not, we can always make some small changes, or if there are more moderate, more involved changes, we'll send it back to the downtown management board for processing. So we want to keep that process in place. Downtown management board, send it to us, we'll look it over, determine to go forward, or to send it back to them. And then will then send it to Jake.
thank you all.
Thank you.